as much as I would like to deny it, I have to admit to myself that I'm a girl who's had some pretty bad habits. Through the years, I've reflected and I've thought about the things that I wanted to change, the things I needed to change, and for one stupid reason or another, I didn't do it. I either told myself, oh, I've got plenty of time, or I told myself, it's really not that big of a deal, it's not that important. Bunches of stupid reasons that I chose not to take actions. Sometimes it may have been just pure laziness on my part, and I have to own that. Sometimes it may have been lack of motivation, may have been lack of support, but whatever the reasons were, I have let myself remain in some bad habits that now I get to deal with the consequences of, and I'm not real happy about it. However, the last few months I've been reading a lot about habits and about routines and how those things impact the quality of our life. And I've decided that 2025 is a year that I am going to make some definite changes in my habits. Now, I've been here before and would make a list of all the habits that I knew that I needed to change. And then I would be stupid, as I'm prone to do, and I would decide to get busy and start changing them all in January. And you're smart people, you know how that story ends. All of those changes that I was so anxious to make and determined that I was going to make all at the same time, they of course got abandoned as I got overwhelmed and as life got in the way and as I once again fell back into my old bad habits because I was swamping myself trying to change too many things at once. So this year, after, like I said, a lot of reflection and introspection and reading, I have decided that I have some things to change, but I'm going to try and take a smarter approach this year. This year, I'm going to focus on only one habit at a time. Now, I've got more than one habit I need to change, and I've got more than one new routine that I want to implement, but this time, instead of being stupid, as I have been prone to be in the past, I'm going to try to approach it more rationally and in a way that is more manageable, one habit or one routine at a time. One of the first things that I have found in trying to do this, something that is helpful, is to identify the things that are going to get in the way. And these are the things I've always called our sources of frenzy. You know, here at Taming Frenzy, I believe in a holistic approach that one area of our life affects another area of life. And there are several different things that can get in our way when we are trying to establish new habits or create new routines. And being able to identify some of those obstacles is the first step to helping us make a plan to how we're going to overcome them when they inevitably arise. Now, my personal philosophy is that frenzy comes at us from 4 different directions. The first is frenzy comes to us from inside our home. And this can be anything like the chores that need to get done and the toilet overflowing and not having, not knowing what's for dinner that night, not having clean clothes to wear, feeling overwhelmed because the house is dirty or disorganized or cluttered. All of those things in the house, maybe not at your house, but at my house, those things in the home have caused me more than just a little bit of frenzy. The second source of frenzy comes from what I call the out there. And that may be the world of work, your job. That may be things going on in your community, your church, etc. But the things that are not inside of the 4 walls of our house, the things that are out there that are causing us frenzy, grief, obstacles, etc. The third source of frenzy, whether we want to admit it or not, is often other people. It's their expectations of us, their feelings of what we should be, and it's the obligations and the roles that we have. All of those things cause us frenzy from other people and our interactions with those people. And then finally, and this is sometimes the hardest one to accept and to recognize, is the frenzy that comes from within ourselves. And it's the things like the grief or the procrastination or the unmotivation or the laziness. Yes, I admit I've got that too. The laziness that we may feel. It's the indecisiveness. It's all of those things that come from within, our feelings about ourselves, the emotions that we deal with, and frequently the limiting beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves. So in this year going forward, in order to make these new changes, to start these better habits that I know I need and that I want to make, I have looked at some of these sources of frenzy to identify what's going to trip me up. I'll give you an example here. For January, the habit that I want to implement is a new morning routine that includes exercise or movement. So far, I'm doing really well on this. It's the one thing I'm working to change. I'm not trying to change everything, but to change that one thing. To get up, to have a morning routine where I do some stretches and some exercises, to where I incorporate some movement, then to where I do some morning reading and reflection time and some journaling. That's the one change I want to make for January. But when I was thinking about, creating this routine and forming this habit, I had to ask myself, what are the things that are likely to get in the way and to derail me? And to be real honest, the biggest derailment of that is me. It's things like not being consistent or waking up and feeling tired and just unmotivated. I don't want to do that right now. I'll do that later. Those are the things that derail me the most. There also can be things in my house that disrupt that as well. If I don't have out the things I need to do the exercises, if I don't have any of the free weights or the resistance bands, if I have to work too hard to go find those things, I'm less likely to do those. So I have had to take a look at the sources of frenzy in my life and how they're going to impact the habits and routines that I want to create. And as you're going forward into a new year, or at any time, there's nothing special about a new year, in my opinion, but as you decide that there are changes you want to make, habits you want to implement, routines that you need to get set in place in your life and in your home to make things better, identify your own personal sources of frenzy. What are the things that get in your way? What are the things that cause you to stumble? What are the things that give you grief? What are the things that you wish you could change because they just flat out drive you nuts? We've all got them. And there is nothing wrong with admitting to ourselves that we have frenzy in our life, that we have frenzy in our home, that we have frenzy that works on us from out there, that we have frenzy from other people. Much as we may love them, we still get some frenzy from them, because you do that in all relationships, and that we get frenzy from inside of ourselves. There's nothing wrong with admitting those, and in fact, I would say it's good to admit those and acknowledge them, because then, once you know what they are, and you've identified specific ones that may impact your new habit or routine, then you can set a plan to overcome those instead of being like I have been for so long and just having great intentions and then getting thrown off track. One of my absolute favorite sayings, and I've said this for years, I don't remember where I read it or heard it, but my favorite saying is, if you can't be a good example, at least you can serve as a horrible warning. Well, frequently I've not been a good example. I've probably been the horrible warning, but I'd like to work on changing some of that by deciding what habits and routines I want to change, by thinking about my own sources of frenzy. I feel like that's a good first step. I'm anxious to see how the rest of the year goes, because I want to look back at the end of this year and finally say to myself, I did that. I managed to change that routine. I managed to implement that habit. I don't even think about it now. It's like brushing my teeth. I want some of those things to happen, but I've got to be the one to make it happen, and I need some strategies to help me do so. Unfortunately, I'm not Superwoman, and most of us aren't. So as we're going forth into a new year that's laying out in front of us, I would encourage you to identify your personal sources of frenzy, because they can make a difference in how well you, or how easily at least, you achieve your goals, how easily your home runs, how good you feel about yourself and about life in general. Identifying our sources of frenzy is a good exercise and can have very positive implications for us coming forth.